What I want to ask you first is what is Buddhism?
What is Buddhism? Of course, Buddhism is one of the major religions in the world. So, statistically, we have the Christianity as the largest, then we have the Islam, and I think the Hinduism, and I think it's the Chinese folk religion, which is a combination of Confucianism, Taoism, because of course there's a big population in China. And then the Buddhism is the fifth largest religion. So Buddhism is in fact a religion. So, but some people, especially in the West, they would say it's not a religion. It's a science of mind. So Buddhism can be approached in different ways. It can be approached as a religion where people come together as a community and have communal celebrations. Or it can be approached as science of mind, which an individual can practice. So when we say Buddhism, like some people in like Chinese community, they are immigrants here in the Philippines. They maintain their Buddhist traditions. They celebrate certain festivals related to the Buddhism. But some of them, they don't practice like read the sutras or practice the meditation. So that can be a way of expressing the Buddhism. It can be a cultural
Right.
way of embracing the Buddhism because you are born into a Buddhist family. It's part of your cultural identity. Or on the other hand, some people in the West, because mental health is a big thing these days, people are stressed out, people are having frustrations, depression. So the techniques and methods of Buddhism, in a way, can be used as a tool, even if you don't practice the cultural nuances of the religion.
In your own opinion, or in your own understanding of Buddhism, do you think it is more of a science, a philosophy, or a religion?
The thing with religion is that it's really very difficult to set the parameter as to what religion and what is not religion. Like, for example, here in Cebu, we have a Taoist temple, correct? We have a Taoist temple. And actually, if you go to the Taoist temple, everyone goes to the Taoist temple. All the people here of Cebu, even tourists, everyone goes to the Taoist temple. Did they give you a pamphlet telling you what is Taoism, explaining to you, or converting you to so-called Taoism? I haven't heard of a single Cebuano being converted to Taoism. And if you go to the Taoist temple, there are no monks. There are no mass, but the Chinese people, they go there to make offerings to their ancestors. So, can we say that they are promoting a religion? Or is it because they just want to build a temple so they can have a place to do things? And of the so-called Chinese community here in Cebu who goes to the Taoist temple, how many of them really understand what is Taoism and who really reads the books on Taoism and have the philosophy and have the practices? Not really. Some people, the religion is very difficult to define. If you look at in Wikipedia, the statistics in China, 90% are unaffiliated, meaning they don't have a religion. But of these people who call themselves unaffiliated, they actually go to a Confucian temple, they go to a Buddhist temple. But if you ask them, what is your religion? They'll say, oh, I have no religion. I have no affiliation. It's kind of like here in Cebu, we say, oh, it's Chinese New Year. This afternoon, I will go to Taoist temple. Evening, I'll go to Chuon Buddhist temple. But if you ask, what is your religion? Are you Taoist? Are you Buddhist? I have no religion. I just go there to celebrate stuff. So is the person religious? Is he practicing religion because he goes to the temple? So that is because the thing is Western religion and Oriental religions are built on totally different premises. Western religions like Christianity, Islam, they are religions of affiliation. Like, for example, I am Catholic. I don't go to other Protestant churches. I don't visit Iglesia ni Cristo. I don't visit uh, Seventh day Adventist. I
Right.
just go to the Catholic Church. But not so with Oriental religion. You're free to visit any Buddhist temple, any Taoist temple, Shinto temple. So the person may not necessarily affiliate, even if he keeps on going to the temple to join the celebration. So what is the religion and what is not religion is actually difficult to define and to set the parameters.
Do you think it is more of a philosophy, Buddhism?
If we really look at sociologically, historically, when you come to think of it, public education is actually modern. Most people in the old days did not know how to read, how to write. So most of the lay people, not everyone, of course, there are highly educated people. Um, but education was a luxury in the past. Like being able to read, to write was quite a luxury. So and people did they don't have access to information. Like the printing press was only invented in the 1500s. So is 2,500 years. So for these 2,000 years that there was no printing press, the monks just copied the sutras in palm leaves manually. So that is why most people actually, they have not read the Buddhist sutras historically. The task of lay people usually historically is to go to the temple and to make a donation, to make quote unquote merit. We call it in Pali punya. Punya means you're making a donation, and this donation is meritorious, like you cook a food and you bring it to the temple, you offer it to the monks, or you offer robes. But as to how many people are really practicing, it is believed that only monks can practice. So, yes, so the philosophy, the practice is believed to be, can only be done by monastics. This was the traditional paradigm because most lay people, of course, they are busy, they have to take care of their family. So most people really don't engage in the philosophy or read the sutras or even meditate. So it is left to the monks. So historically, most people really, and to this very day, Buddhist countries still carry this mindset that lay people, as a lay person, I just go to the temple and then I would join a celebration. I would give, I will make donations of food, donations of robes, or even money for construction of temples. So most people have that mindset. But not so much in the West. When Buddhism was introduced in the West, people read a lot of books. Western people are very
Right.
rational,
Intellectual,
logical,
yeah.
intellectual. So, yeah. So, but I think that is why there is this popularity of, I think, Mr. S. N. Goenkai's Vipassana, because it introduces Western people into the actual practice. So it takes out the cultural nuances of the religious aspect of the religion.
Right. But I remember there was also mentioned, yes, dili sila, they can't practice, the lay people cannot practice actual Buddhism, no? I think the Buddha also mentioned that you can have enlightenment by doing these things, pero not necessarily in a more stricter manner compared to the monks, right? So it's still open to everyone in a way.
Of course, in fact, historically, there has been many lay people who have great accomplishment in the Buddhism and have great attainments. If we read the Buddhist sutras, both monks and lay people they gain enlightenment. There are even lay people who exceeded the attainment of monastics. But as I have said, if we just look at the sociological conditions of the past, reading sutras is difficult for most people, primarily because there's not much available of them. There are no printing press. So what the most that lay people can do is to just listen. You go to the temple and listen to the monks reciting the sutras. You go to the temple, you listen to a dharma talk given by a monk. Because most people, they don't have access to the sutras. Unlike these days, we have internet. These are, we usually, the way we think is we usually project our modern mindset to the past, which actually um, may create an unnecessary, may create, I would say, a wrong view of the history of, let's say, a religion. Like, for example, you want to read Charles Dickens' novel, Jane Austen novel. These are the Victorian times. So you imagine yourself, you are in the Victorian era. So there was no internet. So people have to write, it's snail mail, and people have to ride horses, and they have this technology. But we do understand what is the Victorian era. It's not so long ago, it's in the 1800s. And so this technology and their way of life, they're very conservative. Men and women cannot walk together. So they have these social norms that if we read these books, we have to place ourselves in the right context, that these are not modern people like us. So if we think also the same with, if we want to study Buddhism, if we want to study a certain religion or sociological phenomenon, we have to understand the context of the society in the past. So actually, the access to the sutras is actually very difficult. Who can possess the sutras? Maybe in one temple they have one complete set. It's not that like each monk has a copy. Like there's only one copy
Right.
and it's manually written, and that's difficult. Even some of the monks they haven't read it.
So can you say, well, just maybe to relate them to other religion, um, because of this, that is one of the reasons why religion has become prominent. The Grog you'd see during those times because they had no, it was their way of education, of maybe a moral guide for them.
The success of the propagation of Buddhism is because it was adopted by the rulers, the kings of certain area, like King Ashoka of India, the monarchs of Myanmar, Burma, the kings of Thailand historically embraced the Buddhism. And so when the king will embrace a particular religion, most likely your subject will follow. Actually, the Buddhism actually, there were actually seven teachers at the time of the Buddha. The Buddha is just one of them. One of the teacher is Jaina Mahavira, the founder of the Jain religion. There is Jainism in India to this day. They were actually contemporaries, but there were other five. There were seven of them who were prominent teachers of India. But the other five were forgotten because it did not have the patronage of certain aristocrats or the business people. The religion of Jaina Mahavira was embraced by the middle class, which were the businessmen, the merchants, and they do have money. So they were able to build temples, to write down the teachings. So you need the funding and political support to establish a religion. And so Buddhism actually was became prominent in Southeast Asia because of the it was embraced by the aristocratic and the monarchy.
Right, right. So what was the major worldview or philosophy or belief system during the time of the Buddha? It was in India, right? When all those
Yes.
five teachers, yeah. What was there such a maybe a name for their worldview at that time, or their religion at the time?
Yeah. The Buddha actually, when we think of Buddhism, when we read the book about Buddhism, it's not like the Buddha arise out of nothing. That there was no religion practiced in India. It's not like that. There was already a plethora of spiritual practices and disciplines in India.
And it's not proper to say it was actually Hinduism, right? It was just a term that was adopted. But was there like a name talaga na associated with those spiritual practice during the time of Buddha?
The word Hinduism was actually from the colonizers. The Hinduism, so they just group all the religions in India and they just call it Hinduism. So it's easier to to designate, to differentiate it from the Christianity days and say, oh, that is so to designate the local religions of India in like in one big umbrella. So the people, the Western colonizers, they just call it Hinduism. But actually, there are so many traditions, there are so many practices within the so-called religions of India. But they never really called themselves Hindu or Hinduism. There was no such thing. This term only arose during the colonial era. Now, the context of Buddhism was that in the days of Buddha, there was the Vedas, the Vedas, which was the scripture of the, well, we can say, okay, let's just use the word Hinduism, okay, for simplicity. So, and the Vedas, the word Vedas means knowledge. Vidya means knowledge. So the Vedas is the knowledge of the divine. It is divinely inspired. Now, in India, there is such a thing as a caste system. So in the caste system, you have the priestly class, the Brahmins, you have the warrior class. And when we say warrior class, we don't mean to say they're just ordinary soldiers. They're kind of like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So these are aristocratic family. These are people, knights in shining armors, like you have Sir Galahad. It's something like that. Then you have the merchant class. Then you have the ordinary people, like um, the people who tend to the farms, the serf, the ordinary laborers, and then you have the untouchables from the lowest caste of the society. Now, the Vedas, which is the scripture, can only be read by the Brahmins and the Brahmin priest, the highest caste of the society. So, when the Brahmin would die, his son would inherit the Vedas. He has to train. So it is inherited from father to son. In the old days, women are not involved in religious affairs. So, and the Vedas prescribe certain rituals, certain recitation during the birth of a child, in the death of a loved one, in the shall we say in a harvest ceremony or in the planting. So there are many seasons, events in life. You need the Brahmin priest in order to recite the Vedas. And so the Brahmin priest, it would appear, holds the key to salvation, to moksha. And so there was a movement in India called the Samana movement who rejected this idea. The Brahmins, they lived within the village. They served the people in the village. They recite the prayers, the Vedas. They perform the rituals, of which there were many, and there were many gods that were invoked. And so the Samana movement is a movement. The word Samana means um, mendicant. If we compared it maybe in the Catholic, maybe the movement of Saint Francis of Assisi. So the Franciscans, the Dominicans, they are mendicants. They would go out of the village and stay in the forest. and they would stay there. They don't live in the village like the Brahmins. And then they would stay there in the forest to practice meditation, to practice spirituality. And they rejected the authority of the Vedas, of the Brahmin priests. So these are the yogis of India. These are what we call the samana. And the Buddha, the movement of the Buddha is part of this samana movement. And in fact, the Buddha is called Samana Gotama. So he is one of the samana. He is one of those mendicant. He is one of those who go out of the village and stay outside and live in the forest.
Right. So he was one of those teachers who contested the way of the Brahmins, right? Basically.
Correct, correct.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So him and along with the other five teachers, is that correct?
Yeah.
Did they were they teaching about the same time?
Yes, we can read in the sutras that certain disciples of these other teachers would come to the Buddha and ask him to clarify what is his position about their worldview, because each of the teachers have their own way of their own approach. In fact, one of the teachers believed that there really is no such thing as an afterlife. So what you do is you enjoy this present life. So it is a kind of a hedonism. So you engage in all types of pleasure. So that was his belief that there really is no. The teaching of Jaina Mahavira in the sutra called Niganta Nataputa. Niganta Nataputa means he who is without possession. His belief is that the karma can be purified. We are carrying our karma from the past, our samskara. It can be purified because of our attachment to the body. You practice abnegation, mortification, meaning you for example, you fast for a very long time. So the desire for food, you let go of the desire for food. You you sit on a bed of nails.
This was
Or
Jainism, you said?
yes, yes, because it
Uh-huh.
is believed that our attachment to the body, in Jainism, we have what we call jiva and ajiva. Jiva is kind of like the divine, and the body, matter, is ajiva, meaning it is contradictory to the spirit. So the flesh is contradictory to the spirit. So what you do is you practice mortification. Like you have seen in the like during Holy Week, there are people who practice self-flagellation.
Yeah.
There are people
Uh-huh.
who crucify themselves here in the Philippines.
Yeah, it's curious now that you see parallels between these religions, no?
I think that historically there has been this belief that the body is sinful. And because the body causes us to create negative karma because of its desires. So what you do is you mortify it. You whip yourself. You place yourself in certain circumstances which are painful, and you withstand this pain. And by doing so, you get rid of the desires of the body. So this is how to purify the desires of the body. And doing so, you liberate the spirit. This was the teaching of Niganta Nataputa. It may be this may be a bit biased because this is based on the Buddhist sutras. If you interview a Jain uh, follower, possibly maybe he has a different way of explaining this.
Yeah,
But
because I
this is
know that yeah, because I know that the Buddha was teaching about the middle way, right? Not to the extremes of both, like polarities, diba?
yeah,
So
right.
yeah, I can see why they would contrast and argue with each other. Were they arguing with each other back then?
The teachers did not really actually meet, but it's
Uh-huh.
actually the followers. Some of the followers of the Jainism, for example, would go to the Buddha. A very good example would be Upali. He's called Upali the Tall. Apparently, he was tall, so that's why he's called Upali the Tall. He was an intellectual. He was very smart, and he was a disciple of Niganta Nataputa of the Jainism. And what happened was he was tasked to go to the Buddha and refute his teachings. But what happened was during their refutation, during their argument, it seems that the Buddha's position was, in fact, much more logical, much more rational, so much so that Upali himself joined the group of the Buddha. And during the first council, after the death of the Buddha, where they recited the sutras, Upali was a very important figure. He recited the Vinaya Pitaka, which is the first set of books. The Vinaya is the discipline of monks. So, what were the discipline that was prescribed by the Buddha? So, they recited all these things in the first council, and Upali was there. He was a disciple of Niganta Nataputa. Then he crossed over to the Buddha, and he became one of the important figures in the Buddhism.
Right. I'm curious lang, well, was Jainism also about reaching enlightenment, the nirvana, like the end goal, let's say the end goal of it?
all all the religions of India, including the traditional Brahmanic religion, is really focused on moksha. Moksha. The concept of samsara, that we are reborn again and again, is not very unique to the Buddhism. This has always been the belief in the Brahmanism, as well as the other teachers believe the same, that we are, after we die, we can be reborn depending on our actions, depending on our karma. This is a Buddhist teaching, and it is not unique to the Buddha. These things were already thought of at the time. This was the prevailing worldview. So the concept of karma, the concept of samsara, the endless cycle of rebirth, and the concept of moksha, to be liberated from this endless cycle of rebirth, is not really unique to the Buddha. This is the worldview that was prescribed in India by the Samanas, by the Brahmins. It's just that the approach of the Buddha is probably different from the others. His approach is he he used a different approach in order to reach moksha.
I'm curious lang, in India right now, like what's the percentage of people who practice Jainism?
The Jainism is a very, it's a minority religion in India. But the Jain usually are they're very highly educated. These are highly educated, and they are rich. They are kind of like merchant class. There's a community of Jain in Antwerp, in I think Amsterdam, Antwerp, the capital. Yeah. Anyway, the diamonds in Africa goes to Antwerp, and then the people who handles this, the diamond business, are the Jain, the people of India who are of the Jain religion. There are jewelers in Japan. There's a street in Japan where there are jewelers, and then these jewelers are from India, and they are from the Jain religion. Historically, the Jain people have been businessmen, and they are very successful, especially when it comes to accountancy, when it comes to money, when it comes to jewelry, gemstones, gold, because they are very honest. They are one of the people who are really, they really stick to the teachings of Jaina Mahavira, at least the moral precepts. Like they are strict vegetarians. They never eat meat, and they never lie. And that is why they are trusted in the business. So they are, if they have like a shop of jewelry, they will never deceive you. So most people, even in Japan, even in Europe, like they would. So this has always been the reputation of the Jain community. They're a bit small, but they're quite. Majority of them are actually quite wealthy and educated. And usually they would take up business related courses. Buddhism also in India is a minority right now because Buddhism in India it flourished for a time, and then at a certain point, the Hinduism had the upper hand, and so it eventually died out in India. But it spread in Southeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, Sri Lanka.
Pero it's quite contradictory lang no na when you said about Jainism, it's about um, like extreme fasting and all those things. And then ang mga practitioners karon is our wealthy businessmen.
Yeah, because you have to understand that these are lay people. If you look at the Jain monks, their practitioners,
Ah,
the monks,
right.
they only wear a loincloth. Yeah, and they also cover their face like this because,
Really.
yeah, because they might harm an insect. It's something like that, and they have kind of like a broom that they always carry with them, and they would sweep the floor because they might step on an insect. That's
Oh,
how
that's how
meticulous they are. Maybe you can generate an image of
yes.
Jaina Mahavira in meditation and the Buddha in meditation. Because if you go to India and you look at an image of Jaina Mahavira in lotus position practicing meditation, you will get the impression that it is the Buddha. Their iconography is very the same. They're in meditation, in lotus posture. And actually, it's very difficult to spot who is who and which is which. But there are indicators. Yeah,
Mhm.
because the imagery of the Buddha and Jaina Mahavira is very much the same.
Right, right. Yeah, because all those postures, even the practice of yoga, kay, di ba? It precedes pag yun the teachings of the Buddha and Jainism, right? Because it was already there in their practices, in their spiritual practices.
Correct. Before the Buddha attained enlightenment, he had 6 years to study with the Samanas, the
Right.
yogis of India. The first two teachers he had was Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputa. And these two teachers, they practiced the yogi teachings, the teachings of the yoga, where the end goal is samadhi. In the yoga, the final moksha, the final end is called samadhi. And the Buddha already attained the samadhi as taught in the yoga, but he said that this is not yet the final goal. It is not liberation. It is not the final moksha. So that is where I would say, but the Buddha did not say that the practice of samadhi is wrong. In fact, he embraced it. If we read, if you go to the Eightfold Path, we have sama samadhi. In English, translated as right concentration. So practicing samadhi is part of the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. The Buddha never said that the yogis of India are wrong in their practice that leads to samadhi. It is part of the discipline, but it's just that that is not the final goal. That is not the final moksha, which in Buddhism we call nirvana.
Can you tell us, well, a brief summary of how Buddhism started with Siddhartha?
The story of the Buddha actually did not start on his birth. It started way before many lifetimes. He was an ascetic called Sumida. Sumida. And this was many, many aeons. There was a Buddha named Dipankara. So each era has its own Buddha.
You mean eons? Is it like on another, how do you say, life
Thousands of
cycle?
years. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It can be interpreted in many different ways, but we know that these are thousands and thousands of years. That is why we have Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya Buddha is depicted as fat. Maitreya Buddha, a day will come that the teaching of Gautama, our historical Buddha, will be forgotten. And Maitreya will come and reteach the Dharma. And he is the Buddha of that era. But actually, no one has seen Maitreya yet. But the Chinese depict him as fat. Uh, there's an explanation for that, but that's how they depict it. But Maitreya is the Buddha of the future. So there were many Buddhas of the past. There are many Buddhas of the future. So in this Dipankara was the it was a very, very long time ago. He was the Buddha teaching the Dharma. And Sumida actually made a vow that he too will become a Buddha. And it was predicted by the Dipankara Buddha that he will become a Buddha named Gautama. And before he became a Buddha, he actually had so many lifetimes that sometimes he is reborn as an animal, sometimes as a monkey, sometimes as a naga. A naga is a kind of like a dragon, like a giant serpent. Before his final birth as Siddhartha. So those stories of his previous birth are written in called Jataka. So the Jataka tales, stories of the birth of the Bodhisattva. So a Bodhisattva is a Buddha, uh, it's a work in progress Buddha. So that is a Bodhisattva.
Before we proceed, can you define for us what Buddha means?
Buddha means awaken. If we look at the etymology, it is awakening. So the most the closest translation is the awakened, sometimes enlightened. But for me, awakened is awakened to the ultimate truth, the absolute truth. So one who has attained moksha. But there are also people who attain enlightenment, but they are not considered Buddha. Like the disciples of the Buddha himself, like the one I mentioned, Upali, they're called Arhat. An Arhat is one who is a disciple of a Buddha and practices and finally attain enlightenment himself. The main difference is that for Arhat, they need the guidance of a Buddha. But for a Buddha has to work for many lifetimes to accumulate merit in order to create what we call a sasana. A sasana is a lasting teaching of the Dharma. That's why to this very day, we still have temples, we still have monastics, we still have the sutras. This is because of the merit generated by Gautama for many lifetimes that he accumulated. If we did not have that much merit, we will not have the sasana enduring for 2,500 years. So the reason why we still have the teaching, the sasana, is because of the merit generated by Gautama. So arhat are people who needs the guidance of a Buddha. To this very day, if we work hard, we read the sutra, we practice the meditation, everything, we do all the practices, we can become um, reach certain levels, even if it's not arhat, maybe at least stream entry because there are 4 levels. So maybe the first level, second level, still possible to this very day.
And what are these four levels? Well,
4 levels of enlightenment for what we call Shravakas, disciples. The first one is stream entry. The second one is a once returner, a non-returner, and finally Arhat. Stream entry is one who have, it is based on Dasa Samyojana, 10 fetters. So there are 10 fetters like bonds that ties us to samsara. So is one who attains stream entry is has let go of three, the first three, which is the first one is Sakaya Diti, self-identity view. The view that I am this body, this so-called I. You're able to disentangle yourself from what we call the 5 khandhas. Nama and Rupa. Rupa means body, Nama means mind. Nama includes consciousness, volitions, cognition, and feelings. The capability to disentangle oneself. That is the first um, fetter or bond that ties us to samsara. The second one is doubt, vichikicha. You are very sure of the Dharma because you have experienced it firsthand. That's why all your doubt disappears. That there really is such a thing as moksha. And the third one is silabata paramasa, which is the belief in rituals and ceremonies. Rituals and ceremonies like the Vedas, because the one of the teaching of the Buddha is that ritual ceremonies really will not change your karma. If you practice the rituals of the Vedas, it has no effect whatsoever. Performing ceremonies, performing rituals is not bad in itself. It has its own place. Like we celebrate the wedding of two people, we celebrate the death, we commemorate, we show respect. But if we perform ritual, like for example, I will offer like a food to the gods, I will offer sweets, flowers, and then I will recite certain things. Then I will say, oh, all my sins are forgiven. The Buddha doesn't believe those things. And that is the first fetter that you need to understand. It has something to do with the right view. So those who attain stream entry, in fact, has attained, uh, we can say, nibbana at a glimpse.
Right. Okay, I think the like what was the second entry that you mentioned when
The
people.
second and the third involves the fourth and the fifth fetters. The fourth and the fifth is kama, raga, and vyapada, craving, aversion. So if you can eliminate at least 50%, at least just a small part, you become a once returner. A once returner is you will be reborn in the realm of kama dhatu, in the realms of the sense desire, in one of the sensual heavens, or even here on earth, only once. A non-returner no longer returns to the kama dhatu. He will be reborn in the rupa dhatu, which is the realm of forms. It is beyond the realms of the senses. So he has totally eliminated the fourth and the fifth, which is craving, aversion, the desire for sensual pleasure. The third stage is actually a very high state of mind. The capability to purify the mind of all forms of sensual craving and all forms of anger is actually not a joke. And if you read the sutra, that is the highest attainment of lay people. We call that anagami, a non-returner. Okay.
So in the idea of the realm of pleasure and the realm of forms, so I guess in other religion, this is interpreted as heaven. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
this is correct. This is actually, yes, this is heaven in the Buddhist cosmology. So the realms, actually there are 31 planes of existence. 31 planes of existence. And divided into the highest form is called Arupa Dhatu or Arupa Loka. Rupa means form, Arupa means no form. The people living in this realm do not have a body. They are pure mental energy. We can say they are similar to, like when we say electricity, pure energy. So we cannot really see electricity. We can see the light bulb. The light bulb is a manifestation of the electricity. That's not electricity per se. What is electricity after all? So no one has seen electricity. So it's the same with that. They exist as pure mental energy. And the teacher of the Buddha, the one I mentioned earlier, Alara Kalama and Udakara Maputa, reach this level. And this level of very high exalted mental state, this is believed to be the moksha, the liberation believed by the yogis of India at that time. Now, the second one, so that is the arupa. The rupa dhatu is the people living in the rupa dhatu or the rupa loka. They have forms, they have physical, but it's very refined. Like you can say their form is ethereal and they don't eat, they don't have sexual desires. In some literature, you can find that all of them are male. I don't know. Maybe it's. I have personally, I haven't read in the sutra itself. It's a later interpretation. They would say that those in the realm of forms are all male. But anyway, those in the realm of forms are people who have attained what we call the jhana. The jhana are very high exalted mental state. When you die and you have reached the level of jhana, then you will be reborn in that planes of jhana. And there are four jhanas in the realm of the rupa dhatu, the realm of forms. They are called realm of forms because they are not pure mental energy. They still have a form, but their form is not like us. It is not. It's not like a crude form. And then the lowest level is called the kama dhatu, the realm of desire, which includes our the realms of humans. And there are also six heavens related to the realms of sense desire. So the six heavens are still under the kama dhatu. So that is why there are 31 all in all. The lower ones. So you have the heavens, the humans, the animals, the asuras. Asuras are kind of like if you've seen Ghost Fighter. Uh,
Um, you mean the
uh,
anime?
yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like the asuras. Those are the
Uh-huh.
realm of the asuras, kind of like they're monsters, and they keep on fighting with each other. It's one of the realms of existence. They're kind of like they have supernatural power. We can say mga laman lupa, possibly. That would be the closest in our language. So if you've seen Yu Yu Hakusho, Ghost Fighter, the anime, and also the Netflix adaptation, like they go to the quote unquote mundo ng mga halimaw, right? So this is called the Asuras. So that is one realm of existence. Another realm of existence is the hungry ghost. So hungry ghosts are people who they are free to wander, but they are living in a very difficult existence.
Mao ni sila mga white lady or mga
Correct.
women who have been something horrible happened to them and they tend to stay in limbo in between worlds.
That can be one, but usually the interpretation of hungry ghosts are people who have very strong craving. Like for example, you're addicted to drugs, you're addicted to certain like gambling. But you know, these things doesn't really satisfy you. That is why the hungry ghosts, they're called hungry ghosts, so they're always hungry. Like they cannot really satisfy their cravings and they wander throughout the world. And a good example of the hungry ghost is if you have seen or have read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol, you have Scrooge, Ebenezer
Um,
Scrooge.
I
Like there
have
was
maybe yeah not in detail lang but
but you know that there was a ghost of the past, the ghost of Christmas in the future.
uh,
Yeah, one of the visions that Scrooge actually had was his old colleagues in the. He was kind of like he was kind of like a stockbroker. He was in the financial district. They were so attached to their wealth. They were existing like ghosts, and then they were like tied up into a chain, and the chain is tied up to like a chest of gold or treasure. So these people are so tied up with their wealth. And so they become ghosts. They are hunting. And the final level, the lowest level is the realm of hell. The difference between hungry ghost and hell is that in hell you are confined, you cannot get out. And these are what we call the apayas, the state of woe. WOE, woe, woeful states, apaya.
But what were the main precepts of Buddhism?
In the stories in the Dhammapada, verse 183, the monks were discussing among themselves that there were many Buddhas before Gautama. There are also Buddhas of the 10 directions because it is believed that our world is not the only one inhabited by intelligent sentient beings. There are other world systems, like you can call it aliens or whatever. And in each of those world systems, there are also Buddhas teaching there, teaching Dharma. And so they were wondering if the Buddhas of the past, the current Buddha of our time, the future Buddhas, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions in the cosmos are teaching the same things. So this question was given to Ananda, the attendant of the Buddha, and Ananda presented this question to the Buddha. And the Buddha, the historical Buddha Gautama, replied in Pali, Sabba Papasa Akarana, Usalasa Upasampada, Sachita Padiyodanang Etang Buddhana Sasanang, to abstain from unwholesome actions, to perform meritorious deeds, and to purify the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Etang Buddhana Sasanang. So there are three parts. This is called Ovadapati Mokkha, basic training rule, and the foundation of Buddhist practice. The first one is sila, morality. Because before you generate unwholesome actions, your mind must burn tremendously with in an unwholesome state before you harm a human being, before you kill him or abuse him. You must have generated tremendous amount of anger to do that. And this clouds the mind. So the mind is not fit for cultivation. So this is called sila, killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, taking drugs, intoxicants. The second one is dana, generosity, benefiting other beings. Since we live in the world, we cannot just be, we cannot just be indifferent to the suffering of our fellow human beings, to animals, the environment. So we need to actively shape the realm which we are living in. So, which includes nonviolence. Dana is generosity. So there are people who are hungry. So you give them food. Uh, it can be generosity in terms of requisites like food, uh, medicine, clothing, which usually what people do, they go to the temple and offer these things. Generosity can also be with time and energy, like you do volunteer, like you join an advocacy. That is a form of dana. Another form, a very high level of dana or generosity is giving parts of the body because our body is very precious to us, like donating blood or donating parts of the body. That is considered very meritorious. Another is the dana of one's own life, like you die for the sake of others. Like you save others, but in the process you die. So you give up your life to save others. That is considered a very high level of dana. But the highest level of dana is dhamma dana. When you give dhamma or dharma to other people, when you teach them how to live properly, how to meditate, how to purify their mind, that is considered the highest level of generosity. Now, and the last one, so we have sila, morality, and we have dana, generosity. And these are called lukiya, meaning worldly, sometimes referred to as humanistic part of Buddhism. Because we live in the human society. we should not disturb it. We should live with morality. And we also help those who are in need. And the third one is called purifying the mind. It is called bhavana, mental cultivation. And this is called lokotada. The first one is lukiya. This one is called lokotada. Lokotada means transcendent, beyond the realms. So lokotada means you practice the meditation in order to escape, in order to transcend all the realms and enter into liberation, moksha, we call nirvana. So that is the basic Buddhist practice. So there is lokiya, worldly, and there is lokotada, transcendent. Because I think for Westerners, they have this idea that Buddhism is all about meditation. You just meditate whole day long, which is wrong. Actually, sila, if we compare this, sila is kind of like having a car. If your car is broken, well, there's not much you can do about it. You will not reach anywhere. So, living a life of immorality is like having a car that is broken. There's not much that you can do about it. Having dana is generating merit punya. It's kind of like the gasoline. It's the gas. It's a fuel that your car will run. And bhavana, cultivation, is actually, you know how to drive. Because even if you have a car, you have the gas, but you actually don't know how to drive, you will not reach anywhere. So all three are important. So usually that is why sociologically I told you, people they just go to the temple and make offerings. Actually, that is correct. They are generating punya, and even if they don't practice meditation in this life, they still have a chance in the life after. Um, some people they practice meditation whole day long, but they don't have punya, they don't have merit, they don't have a storage of merit. So, well, yes, it will purify their mind, but you won't reach probably that far. I don't know.
So all these precepts, well, eventually the purpose is to gain merit, right? And still,
The purpose of precepts, of moral precepts, is to create a mind which is suitable for cultivation. If your mind is constantly generating lust, you cannot practice the meditation. All of us, we all have these defilements. No one is exempted. All human beings have defilements. We call the three poisons: craving, aversion, delusion. Craving includes greed for material goods, sexual desire, wanting to become somebody, wanting to be famous. All of us, we have that. But if your mind is so, you do not control your mind, you keep on, you have multiple sexual partners, you live a life, you eat whatever you like, you do not restrain your senses. So your mind is so agitated. How can you go to the Lokotara practices? How can you go to
right,
the meditation aspect? Your mind is so clouded by greed, by anger, by lust. So that is why the precept makes sure that you have what we would call a good conscience. So when you sit in meditation, your conscience is clear. Your heart is clear. There are no disturbances of anger. You do not have a guilty conscience. Like if you kill someone, can you imagine killing someone? That's a terrible, that's a terrible offense. You killed another human being. So the guilt that you have to carry is tremendous. And when you sit to meditate, your mind will not be at peace because you did something very unwholesome. So the purpose of the precept is to create a mind suitable for cultivation.
right. Perhaps another word for that is these are the requirements before you do the actual practice, right? Um,
Correct. You are creating the causes and conditions. So in Buddhism, we believe in causes and conditions. So these are
Yes.
having morality, having generosity, creates the right causes and conditions to practice mental cultivation, bhavana.
Right. And then I want to touch up on the basic roots of Buddhism? Because I know this is something of some people are kind of misunderstand this basic roots that they say it's Buddhism is just about suffering. Can you explain to us what these basic roots are really about?
Okay. So the four noble truths. So the four
Sorry,
noble truths.
noble
The
truths. Yeah.
first, yeah, the first one is dukkha. The first one is the truth of suffering. And if you really look at the word dukkha, it is translated to English as suffering. But suffering has a connotation of like physical pain. But the dukkha of, if you really understand the Pali, because the thing, the problem with this is that there is, I would say, a language barrier. Like, have you seen the influencers we have, the Bisaya, like the likes of Rowell Divina, the likes of uh, who is this? The one where her mother always scolds her. Um,
I don't really follow these influencers. My God, I don't really follow
there
Facebook.
is this Bisaya influencer. If you look at the Bisaya influencers, they make jokes in Bisaya. And as a Bisaya, it's you can actually understand the nuance of what they are saying. If they are speaking in Bisaya and then you place an English subtitle there and present it to someone, let's say living in America, they cannot really fully appreciate the joke. Do you
Yes,
get my point?
yes, yes,
Because the
yes,
Bisaya language has a very particular nuance to it
yes.
that
Even
only we
ang Tagalog,
Bisaya.
di ba even ang Tagalog, dili sila kaget sa atong mga, the
Correct.
way we talk,
Correct.
maintain.
There is a very particular, especially when it comes to funny things, when it comes to jokes, there are particular nuances in our language. Now, the scriptures were written in the Pali language. And if you really read the Pali, there's a very particular nuance to it that only the people actually using that language can really get it. And if you translate it to English, there's a very big chance that it can be misunderstood, it can be missed. The suffering, the dukkha in the Chinese, when they translated the sutra, it is translated into bitter. Bitterness, the Chinese character for bitter. So to them, the first noble truth is life is bitter. So if you watch some of the kung fu movies, like the sea of bitterness, like the ocean of samsara is the sea of bitterness. So that is how it is being translated in the subtitle. So they
Yeah.
translate it as bitter. Yeah, you have seen?
No, but I think this is also something similar, definitely in other religion. In Islam, Arabic, right? Even in Bible, the Hebrew. So definitely there
Yeah.
are.
But the word dukkha actually, sometimes in some English translation, it is translated as stressful. Sometimes it is unsatisfactory. If I'm going to translate dukkha in Bisaya, I would translate it as wailami. Wailami. Siya ka wailami nimo ay. Wailami kay why forever. All phenomena of mind and body arise, persist, and pass away. There is nothing fixed in the mind. There is nothing fixed in the body. So wailami because eventually all things will just pass away. So it is stressful. So living in such an impermanent state and you want things to be permanent, this creates problem. So the Buddha, because you were asking about the life of the Buddha, of course he was a prince. He went out of the palace and he saw that there were people getting old, dying, getting sick, and he said, Jara piduka. To decay, to get sick, to grow old is to suffer.
That's why
Maranang
lami.
Yeah, why lami? Maranang piduka, to die is to suffer. The origin why we die is because of birth. When you are born, you are bound to die. And Buddha said, Jati piduka, to be born is to suffer. And in between birth and death, there is sukha paridiwa dukkha dumanasa supayasa sambhavanti piduka. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, and an entire mass of suffering. You get what you do not want. You get what you do not want. You get what you want, but it doesn't really fully satisfy. You want 1 million, but it doesn't really, you want 2 million more. So the entire life is an accumulation of things that you want. You want to satisfy your desire for food, the desire for sex, all these things, but it doesn't really give you that lasting satisfaction. So that is why the entire life is a mass of unfulfilled desires, which brings to the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering, samudaya. And he identified tanha. And it can be kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. Bhava means existence. Existence, you have this image of yourself, this I am successful. I have this image that I project to the world. This desire to project oneself, your identity to the world is called bhavatan. Vibhavatan is you don't want. Like for example, you want to be seen as someone who is rich, who is successful. Vibhavatanha is, it means when you become poor, when you become unsuccessful, you are suffering tremendously. So it is the opposite. So you want to be handsome, but the reality is you are ugly. So that is bhavatanha, wanting to become something. Vibhavatanha is not wanting to become something. Kamatanha, which is the desire for the senses, the desire to taste food, the desire to give comfort. And these things happens very blindly. You're just following the senses. It's kind of like the mind is in an autopilot. And the third one is the cessation of suffering. If you want your suffering to disappear, to diminish, then you need to get rid of certain things. The samyojana, the fetters that bind you in samsara. Unless you will be born again and again, you will suffer again and again. So that is why the state of non-rebirth, the unmanifest, that is the nirvana. Nirvana is written in the sutras asangkata. Asangkata means the unmanifest, the unborn. And this is the end of all suffering. And the fourth noble truth is how. So how? By following the eightfold path. Sama vacha, right speech. Sama kamanta, right action. Sama ajiva, right livelihood. These three are part of sila, morality. Sama vayamo, right effort. Sama sati, right mindfulness. Sama samadhi, right concentration. And these three are part of the grouping of samadhi. And the last one, samaditi, right view. Sama sangkapa, right understanding, which is part of wisdom. Precept, concentration, wisdom. So these are what we call the three training in the Buddhism, which is the eightfold path. So if we follow this will end uh, our cycle in samsara and the suffering associated with birth and death.
Right. And so we have touched up on the noble truths and the eightfold path. What are the other teachings are important ba in the practice of Buddhism?
All teachings of Buddhism supports the trisikha, the three training of precept or morality, concentration, and wisdom. So in the Buddhism, we say we create the causes and conditions. But the three training is really the main practices. So you are practicing your morality, you're training your speech, you are training your mind for the mindfulness, the sati, and the samadhi, which is the concentration. And these practices we call samatha. So the second grouping are called samatha practices. And the third one is wisdom practices, panya, prajna, purification of view. The reason why we are reborn again and again is because we have a wrong view. And this is not an intellectual understanding. This is a wisdom which is transcendent. You transcend the field of mind and matter. And this wisdom is kind of like a vision. We call it the vision of Dhamma, which is liberating, which leads us to the unbinding. It's called the unbinding, the amata, the undying. That is the nirvana.
So you mentioned something about it is something, I guess, that cannot be rationalized. So you could say that it is something that is more on experienced and should be realized. This wisdom
Yeah.
that you were talking about.
Yeah. The ultimate liberating factor in the Buddhism, the ultimate factor that can lead to moksha, to liberation, is called panya. In Pali, panya, in Sanskrit, prajna. And it can be classified into three. Sutamaya panya, wisdom that you read in books, wisdom that you listen. But this is a borrowed wisdom. This is the wisdom of other people. You also have chintamaya panya, which is a wisdom that is based on logic. You make a calculation, you make some scientific test. And the third one is bhavanamaya panya, prajna from cultivation, from one's own experience. So a I know you have attended the Essen Goenka retreats. So there is a
Yes.
story by Essen Goenka to illustrate this of a famous restaurant. Like there was a restaurant that opened in town. It was new. People were talking about it, and someone heard about it. And the person who told him about it, describing, oh, these are the dishes, this is how it tastes. And the person, because he said that that is a reliable source, he believed that it must be a good restaurant. So that is a sutta maya panya. You heard it from someone and you accept it because that someone is reliable. You respect that person. So you have the scriptures and you accept the scripture because you think it is correct. But it is still a borrowed wisdom. Then you go to the restaurant and you see people, you see someone eating. Um, the people are eating happily. So you're making a logical reasoning. Their food must be great because there's a long queue and the people are really enjoying the food. And but this is what called chintamaya panya, based on logic. You are seeing it and you're making some logical deductions out of it. So you read the scripture and you try to see if it is scientific, if it is logical, is it rational. So you're making a philosophical analysis. But the final wisdom that we are talking about, the perfect wisdom, is bhavanamaya panya. You go to the restaurant and you actually taste the food and you can finally really conclude that it really is the food is really okay. So that is what we call wisdom from cultivation. So you have the scriptures, you can listen to someone, then you make a philosophical inquiry whether it is true or not. But unless you cultivate it yourself, you cultivation, bhavana, mental cultivation, bhavana mayapanya, it is wisdom that is not read in books. It is something experiential.
And this bhavana mayapanya, right? Wisdom from
Yeah.
cultivation. So this is um, the teaching that Buddha was more propagating compared to the
Yes.
other two.
Insight knowledge. We call Vipassana.
Oh, Vipassana. So that's where the word Vipassana.
Correct.
Okay,
Vipassana means insight, to cultivate insight into the nature of existence. So it is
right.
an insight which is not a philosophical inquiry. It is an insight which is not based on books. It is an insight you are really seeing. No, you are perceiving the reality of nature. And based on this, your mind begins to open up.
Yeah, that's true. Um, Curious lang ko, like, are you still, what got you really hooked into Buddhism apart from any other religion, and how come you didn't get to stay, or you didn't stay with Christianity? Because I assume that's the religion you grew up with.
Yeah, it's that is a bit sensitive, come to think of it.
Right. No,
Why
it's okay.
we like because
Uh,
we were touching on the Christianity, no, and there are so many things that can be said about it.
exactly.
I would say first and foremost, we feel encouraged to go to a particular place or we want to join a particular activity when we have good affinity. In the Buddhism, there is the concept of good affinity, kalyanamita. In the Christianity, actually, I don't know anyone. Like, yeah, we are born Christian. Like, you go to a parish, and then there's the parish secretary, and then they would tell you, okay, what do you want? Do you want baptism? Do you want wedding? Do you want funeral? Okay, these are the rates. Do you want a mass uh, for the for the dead? So, and then like for example, like I like what you said, like I'm suffering, like I'm having some kind of like baggage in life. Then I go to the parish. Then I go to the secretary. What am I going to say? I'm going to say, oh, I feel depressed. Is the secretary of the parish equipped to answer that? So I have come to accept that the Catholicism has its place in the sense that if someone is getting married, so we attend their wedding, so we celebrate it in the parish. So it's a communal celebration. So there is a time for that. Someone is born, then we have it baptized to celebrate the birth of a child. We commemorate the death. Also during Christmas, it's time for the family to come together. If we go to mass, so it's okay. So it's a kind of like a communal thing that we do. But within ourselves, what is our, how do you get rid of your anger? How you get rid of lust? Like that. I would say I would go to the Buddhism for that. Also, there are many ways to practice cultivation or the meditation. I would say that I am biased towards the Buddhism. The reason for that, it is rational, it is scientific. There's no room for imagination, for fantasy, for invoking the gods or goddesses, having devotion to this or that, and someone else will come and ease your burden. It's rational, it's scientific, it's a pure science of mind and body. So you understand the nature of the body, do you understand the nature of the mind, the interaction of the two, and how out of your own ignorance you are creating your own suffering. So now you understand the nature of your suffering. So you solve it. You get rid of the defilements of your mind, which is causing you all these problems. So for me, that is why, and the way the approach to it is very scientific, it's very rational, and so non-sectarian in the sense that there is no element of worship. So anyone can practice it, even if they don't want to set up a like a Buddha image or a Buddha statue. You can practice it. Buddhism is in the mind.
If this conversation has sparked new interest and questions for you, consider subscribing to this channel, and I'll bring you more insights from science, philosophy, arts, and more.